Acid based here with Marco. Acid based here with Frank. So we're here with Marina.
I'm here with Sam.
Acid based here with Samir. Freight carrier sitting with Fook. Acid based here with Duke. Acid based here with Augie. Acid based here with Hector. Acid based here with Dayan.
Jeden vylečit.
Yeah, go on. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Acid Base Season 2, Episode 5. We joined today with Dan Lindsey, the founder of the Broker Carrier Summit. Let's hop right into it. How's it going, man?
Good, Alex. How you doing, my friend?
Good, man. Good. Happy Friday. Glad you can make it at this time.
Yeah, likewise, man. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, appreciate you coming, man. Let's hop right into it. I mean, I'm curious of your logistics career. I mean, what's day one in logistics look like for you?
Yeah, so day one in logistics for me was I was 18 years old and I was working on a dock at UPS.
Yeah, I mean, at least boots on the ground start to the career.
Yeah, so 3 a.m. to 9 a.m. I worked the preload shift loading box trucks back in 2001.
So what did your life look like from the time, from 10 a.m. until 2 a.m.?
Well, actually, I was going to college at the time, so I would work from 3 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then I would change, go to school, and I would get done with school around 4 p.m. and then I would go to a second job until around 9, and then maybe get some sleep. I did that for almost 4.5 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say, where did the sleep come in that story?
Yeah, I mean, I replaced sleep with coffee.
Yeah, that's for sure. I guess Zyn wasn't around back in those days, or White Monsters.
No, it was before Red Bull too.
How do you end up going from the UPS like graveyard shift? I mean, into more traditional logistics from the office side of things.
Yeah, so my dad worked for UPS also. He was a driver, and one of the things I told him when I was young, I was like, I'm never going into logistics. So I don't want to do what you do. And here we are. So from UPS, so I got out of logistics, actually. I went to go work for a medical diagnostic company for 4 years. I was also in the Marine Corps Reserves at the time. And so I just graduated college, trying to get more of a professional, career going. I had no idea what I wanted to do. But that was not the place for me. And after about 3 or 4 years of that, it was very apparent that I was not, cut out for that kind of a job. So I got back into logistics by going to work for a large brokerage. Did not know what freight brokerage was at the time. I was just told, hey, come learn logistics, make some money, and keep America moving. So I did. And I was there from 2013 to 2019 and did really well. Had a solid group of customers, solid core group of carriers as well. And
So
really
who
enjoyed
told
it.
you, come into brokerage, come make some money? Is this a recruiter, a friend of yours? I'm assuming it wasn't your father.
No, it's not my father. No, it was a recruiter actually. Yeah. So I went to go work
Yeah,
for TQL in 2013.
there you go. Okay, so you
Yeah,
spent your 6 years there.
I did. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I would ask you, what does your day one look like? But I mean, I've heard that the same story multiple times already. We know it's like 3 to 6 months of training. You shadow a broker. I mean, I've heard this one before.
Oh,
But
yeah. Yeah.
what are your initial thoughts on the atmosphere walking into that office day one?
Yeah, initial thoughts. I was excited. I was young. It was a good opportunity to make some money, learn a piece of the business or the economy that I was not super familiar with. I actually walked away from it on purpose. So it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. One of the things I've always said about my time at TQL is I learned a lot about the good in the industry, a lot about the bad, and a lot about the ugly.
Yeah,
So you see it all, and anyone who says otherwise is kind of lying to you. But
yeah.
it was a great experience. I enjoyed it.
I mean, 6 years is not a little bit of time. I've had the pleasure of going through some companies in the early stages of my career as well. And for anybody that says anything bad about certain companies, at the end of the day, I view it like this. It's like there's companies that are kind of like a university for an industry, right? Like you get into them, you learn the entire business, and then usually there's a stage where you just kind of like move forward. So in your case, what was your next step? I mean, 6 years wasn't a short period of time at all, but what took you out of there? Where did you go from there?
Yeah. So, as you know, work-life balance in the freight world does not exist. And so, I was married. I had a wife. I had three kids in the throes of childhood with them, and so I wanted to really spend more time with my family. So I went to go work for a consulting firm for a year, just some business development for them. It was
Outside
just
of logistics, like fully.
it was more supply chain. So
Okay.
mainly what they sold was parcel spend management, and so it didn't really have any crossover to anything we were doing before.
Yeah.
So
Same
uh,
industry, same, but different for sure.
yeah, same but different, exactly. But yeah, stayed there for a year. I got to take a step back and learn more about the wider issues facing the industry while I was there. And I also learned that the consulting world is very slow. And I'm not a very slow person. I like to move fast. I like to always be busy. And
Well, yeah, I mean,
so
I could tell that from your previous story of like two jobs, college, no sleep. I mean, you
yeah,
definitely like to keep busy.
yeah. Being sitting in one place for a long period of time and not a lot going on does not suit me very well. I get into a lot of trouble if that happens. So I try and stay busy as often as I can.
Yeah, okay. So I'm
So
guessing that's like 2020 to 2021 roughly in the timeline.
that was 2019 actually. So 20 March 1st of 2020, I actually opened up my own brokerage. Me and a partner of mine here in Indianapolis, called Linkage Logistics, and it was March 1st, 2020, 14 days before COVID shut the entire world down, and so that was interesting. But we made
Yeah.
a good run of it. We had a good time. We grew our team from myself to 17 people over the next 3 years. Took it to from 0 to 10.6 million in top line revenue. On the verge of being profitable in 2022 when the bottom kind of fell out of the market and we had to retool a lot of things. Um, but all the while, the reason I started the brokerage and got back in was because mostly I wanted to make a difference in the way carriers and brokers related to each other. And so one of the things that we always said all the time when we were at the brokerage was we don't only want to be the broker of choice for shippers, we want to be the broker of choice for carriers. And what that means is we have to be the best partner that our carriers can think of. And so we really live by that, and we really were able to solidify a lot of really good recurring carrier relationships to the point where we didn't have to go out and shop for loads very often, unless it was a one-off load that we didn't handle on a regular basis.
What type
Um,
of freight is this? Like mostly dry and reefer flatbed? What are you guys into?
We were mostly reefer. We did
Mostly.
a fair bit of vans. We didn't really mess with flatbeds. I've never really had a lot of experience with flatbed or open deck material, so we stayed away from that. And most of the guys that I was working with, or that I brought on to work with me, rather, were all old produce guys. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when you're in the reefer markets, it's obviously a situation where you'd like to be reusing carriers. Reefer's obviously a lot more going on, especially in the produce game with how volatile that is to be kind of load boarding 90% of your freight.
yeah, if you're moving produce and you're on the low boards 90% of the time, you gotta fix that. That's
Yeah, that's for sure. So, I mean, at what point in the timeline are we at now? Basically, current day, like 2023 ish.
so that was 2022. And in 2022, I also went to TIA in San Diego, and I met with some colleagues of mine, Robert Bain, Matt Annis,
Yeah,
Rob McCutcheon, who's over at Taft's, and was just talking about the state of the industry. And I expressed how upset that I was that everyone seemed to find a lot of things to complain about in the freight world, but nobody seemed to be doing anything to fix the problems that
yeah.
they see.
Yeah, just a lot of like handshaking and like being angry, but not a lot of
Yeah,
dialogue towards resolutions.
exactly. Yeah. And so I threw out the idea, like, what if we were to create a community or a mechanism by which brokers and carriers can put their differences aside and actually figure things out and figure out how to become good partners and actually change the way that we interact with each other. And that was after a few beverages, let's just say. So I'm sure everybody was like, yeah, this guy's crazy. He's not going to do anything about it. But every single one of them said, hey, this is a great idea. We have no idea how to do it. But if you ever, get the idea to the stage where you can actually act on it, let us know. We'll help you out.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds to me like one of those typical like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. last call bar conversation.
Oh yeah, it was definitely one of those. So I was the last conversation and the longest conversation I had about this specifically was with Robert Bain. We were at a steakhouse in San Diego, and there was steak. There was a lot of shrimp mac and cheese, and more than a few whiskeys. And he was the one who said, "Hey, if you ever need someone to help out with this, I'm there for you." And so. Yeah, the rest is history. So nine months later, I was driving with my family down to Florida. It was over Christmas, and I looked at my wife and I said, "Hey, I have an idea. Can you write some thoughts down for me?" And she goes, "What's this for?" And I said, "I don't know yet." Well, that little note on my iPhone was the beginnings of what is now the Broker Carrier Summit. It was supposed to be a one-day symposium where brokers and carriers get together and talk through how to be better partners, and talk through things like double brokering, how to avoid it, and maybe what technologies they could use to help each other out. And I really had no idea where it was going to go, but decided to make some phone calls. I called our mutual friend Jaime, called Matt when they were both still over at Taft's at the time, and I called Bain and I called Troy Wheaton with Leonard's Express, and I said, "Hey, gents, I'm going to do this thing. It's going to be one day in Indianapolis. If you can find the time to come, I'd love to have you guys come and speak." And all of them said yes. To their credit, I'm very grateful for their involvement from literally day one. But I sent out a few million cold emails just to everybody and anybody in the industry I could find.
I mean, like a literal million or a figurative million?
Oh yeah, it was 2.2 million emails in a month and a half.
Yeah, that's wild.
So,
that's actually a wild email campaign.
Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah, I didn't realize how expensive emails could get, but I found out real quick.
You definitely found out. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, but that was in January when I got the idea to actually put it to paper. And then we had the first summit the first week of April in 2023. We had 35 people in person and another 35 online. And everyone, and this is true even to this day, everyone who has come, who has given us feedback has said this is one of the best things they've ever done. It's one of the most encouraging things. I had one guy come up and say after the first one in Indianapolis that he's been waiting for 20 years for someone to do something like this in the industry.
Yeah.
So what that told us was the conversation is long overdue for brokers and carriers to stop complaining about each other and actually work toward being better partners. And one of the tenets of that that's really grown is everyone needs to own their own shit, right?
Yeah.
Brokers have practices that they operate under that they shouldn't. And to say otherwise is foolish. Likewise, carriers, same way. They do things that are kind of dodgy sometimes as well. And if you deny that, you're also not being helpful. So everyone needs to own their own piece of the problems that are going on in the industry. And the best way to do that is to come together and actually work the problems out, work the differences out yourself in person.
Well, I mean, I think honestly, this industry would be in a much better place if there was some type of requirements, right? Where like I remember, so I used to work as a garbage man out in Canada, and I wanted to be a truck driver. So I used to be a plumber, and then I was like, I'm gonna get into this whole garbage thing because I'd like to just drive a garbage truck. It's government job. It's like a pretty chill job, and I thought like it'd be cool to like honk the horn when the kids like saw us. And so I go to the garbage company. I'm like, hey, like I'd like to apply to like get my driver's license for the truck, all this kind of stuff. And they're like, hey, actually, you have to work 6 months on the back of the truck, throwing the garbage before anybody's allowed to drive the truck. So you have an appreciation for the work that's going on and the person that's on the back of your truck. And I was like, wow, that sounds incredibly terrible, but let me do it. So I went through all of that. But the moral of that story and the point of that story is that if logistics had that situation where it's like you can't be a broker until you've been 6 months a driver. You can't be a dispatcher until you've been 6 months a driver, vice versa. All of these things, I think the industry would be in a much better spot because everyone would see everyone's perspective, in real life from their own shoes, rather than, I'm a broker, I'm a dispatcher, I'm a driver, and none of the people have ever been on the other side of these fences, and they don't really understand, the struggles from the driver's seat, from the carrier office, from the brokerage office. And that's what, in my opinion, causes that friction. And I think when they're all with each other in real life, it's a lot easier to have civil conversations and say, hey, like, you don't understand maybe this part of being a driver, maybe you don't understand this part of being a broker. And, the dialogue in real life is a lot more civil than the things you might see on social media from time to time.
Yeah, everyone is a badass online. When you can scream at the screen and there's no repercussions. What we've found is that when you get people in the same room, they're people, and the humanizing factor of that is extremely powerful. You're not just screaming at an avatar on a screen. You're actually trying to have a productive conversation with somebody who's literally 2 feet from you. You tend to watch what you say when a little more.
I was gonna say, the potential for physical altercations rises greatly in a situation.
Yeah, like especially if that person is Robert Bain. You can say certain things online, but if he's sitting across from you, you're like, I'm just not gonna say that to that guy. I'm gonna walk away.
Yeah, I might not want to talk to him that way. Or you see a certain truck driver who's like 6'6", you're like, I might not talk to him that way. I think obviously having the real life aspect of things, right? So I've been lucky enough to see JJ and Hector in real life. I've been lucky enough to meet Jennifer Morris, came out here recently. And obviously real life connections, especially with people that you've known for a long time. Like these are people that I've known on the internet for multiple years. And then you spend 5-10 minutes with each other in real life and the bond just instantly becomes much deeper. So I think obviously a conference with the goal of just putting people in the same room is definitely something we needed in the industry.
Yeah. So one of our favorite stories from the summit actually came from our first Indianapolis summit. So again, we had 35 people in the room and we didn't really have a program. My first talk was on the 10 rules of partnership. But before I gave that, one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to go around the room because it was an intimate setting. I just wanted to ask people, hey, what's your name? Where are you from? And why are you here? And no joke, like the first guy that got up was a big trucker guy I think he was from Pennsylvania or New Jersey. He stood up. He said, hey, this is my name. I'm from New Jersey. I'm here because I hate brokers. And it was one of those things you're like, oh, this is going to go the exact way I thought it was going to go. Not well. But the next thing he said was, but I've never met one and I'm looking forward to learning. And that little change, that little turn has come to define everything that we do at the Broker Carrier Summit. Is that, okay, brokers and carriers, you haven't really ever met each other. So let's change that. Let's fix that, get you in the same room and learn from each other. Hey, brokers, do you know what it takes to have a driver sit on the road for an hour and a half to undergo an inspection? No, you don't. So maybe let's talk with some drivers over here about what having an inspection is like. Hey, drivers, do you know what it's like to make 125 cold calls a day and be told no, and have your boss breathing down your neck because you haven't closed a deal in 2.5 months and you worked through 55 RFPs? No, you don't. Maybe talk with the broker on how that sucks.
I thought once they finally land the customer, the driver thinks that like, oh, it's okay, I'm just gonna cancel this load an hour before pickup, and they lose that customer after all those months.
Exactly. Yeah. But those are the kind of conversations that when you get in the same place, you're sharing a meal with each other, you're talking over drinks, or you're just sitting at a table at a networking event talking. Those things get not only resolved, but again, the humanizing factor cannot be overstated.
Yeah, no, that's like 100% right. And I mean, I can obviously self-reflect and say that I was part of the problem at one point in my career, especially on my LinkedIn career. And I mean, I was a dispatcher. I was on the carrier side at the point where I think I was at the height of my I don't even know what word I would use to describe it. I would say I was passionate, but a little theatrical, let's say, at the same time.
I think we've all been there, right?
I think we've all been there. I mean, if you have no passion for something, you're not going to have any emotion towards it, good or bad. Unfortunately, Like I said, the theatrics of it kind of was something I wish I didn't do so much of. But anyways, we've grown out of that. The point being is I was on the dispatcher carrier side of things my entire career. And then I heard about Broker Carrier Summit. And I was like, wow, man, like I would love to go to this. And me and my old partner, like when I had my old podcast, we were thinking about attending, and then I had to figure out some paperwork stuff. But it was like that moment when I heard about it for the very first time. I was like, man, like this is such a good idea. And it was right when I heard about it for the first time is when the market was like in a decline, in that like the decline section where we thought like, oh, it's at the bottom, and then next week it's 5 cents lower, and then next week it's 5 cents. And it just kept doing that forever.
Yeah.
And so when I heard about this event, I was like, man, like how cool would it be to go somewhere and meet drivers and meet, brokers, and we can all discuss like this historic market event we're going through in real life. And it was a cool premise.
Well, and that was one of the coolest things that happened over the course of it was 23 and even throughout 2024 is that brokers and carriers would come to the summit and they began to grow empathetic toward each other. Like, oh man, like you have a broker hearing from a driver about what they go through on the road every day, or hearing from a dispatcher or a fleet manager. Likewise, carriers hearing what brokers have to go through. They started to relate to each other in a way that encouraged them to take up the position that, oh, we're kind of all in this together. So maybe we shouldn't be at each other's throats. Maybe we should find creative ways to help each other. And that's what it's really turned into.
Yeah. I mean, take me through some of the, process of Broker Carrier Summit starting. I mean, what are some of the things for people that people might not know about? Obviously, the complexity of putting a conference together, right? Because we have Manifest coming up on Monday. We have, all these events, all of these conferences that are well established and massive things. But I mean, what are some of the struggles and complexities of basically starting a conference from nothing?
Yeah, well, I don't know if the show's long enough to list all the. I'll tell you this: I thought freight brokerage was complex. Event management and running a conference kind of puts freight brokers to shame in many ways. Mostly it's probably because I didn't know what I didn't know going into it. So I don't know how to talk to hotels. I don't know how to book room blocks of 200 rooms. I don't know how to talk to AV companies and put together a complex, stage. And speaker coordination, like just all those
Yeah.
different pieces. And it really taught me the value of having a team that you can trust to delegate tasks to. And again, it reinforced something that I think every leader needs to understand, is that just because you're the one leading the ship does not mean you have all the answers. It may mean you ask a lot of the right questions, but it does not mean you have all the right answers. And that's one of the most humbling things in starting any new venture, especially a trade show or a conference. Like, I don't know what I don't know. So a lot of the things that people have told us that they really like about the summit is the fact that it's not commercial. It's very well done. I think we run a world-class event, but it's not this stuffy professional environment. Everything we do is done with intentionality, and everything we do is authentic. So when I get up on stage to speak, which is not really my strong suit, to be honest, they get the authentic Dan. They get the Dan who, it's Tuesday afternoon. I'm going to say what I'm going to say. And if that's a problem, then it's a problem.
It's Tuesday afternoon. I'm going to grab the mic and just talk to people like a human.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm going to relate to you. So a good example of that is, so the Fort Worth Summit, right? Our most recent event in Texas, I was supposed to give a 20-minute talk on navigating the freight wilderness. And I called Trey the night before, and I was like, "Hey, I don't want to do that." He goes, "What?" And probably gave him a mild heart attack. And I was like, "Yeah, you know what I want to do? I wanted to sit and talk with somebody about what's going on in the summit, why I'm excited about it, and how it benefits them." And so on a dime, we just pivoted and just said, "Okay, Dan and Trey are going to sit up and talk. Trey's going to ask Dan some questions about the new developments of the BCS, what's going on with the network, all that." And we just had a conversation. And people came up afterwards like, "You know what? That was a really good session." It wasn't planned, but it was real. And people came up after that session and said, "Hey, please never corporatize this, because we liked the feel. We feel like we belong here because we're not being talked to, we're being talked with." And that's important.
Yeah. No, see, that's the thing. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to speak in any absolutes. I haven't attended, any of the conferences. Hopefully, 2025, 2026 is going to be the year that starts all happening. But I've said this time and time again, right? We're in logistics, we're in trucking, and the allure of it to me is that it's supposed to be a blue collar kind of industry, right? And from all the clips and all the things that I see and all the events that I've watched, the online content from, it's like we've lost what trucking is and who truck drivers are and the people that actually are running this industry from boots on the ground, right? Like, this is a blue collar industry. And when you go look at some of these events, I mean, even when I run this podcast, right? I used to run this podcast in a t-shirt, and I was like happy to be in a t-shirt running my podcast. And I was told time and time and time again, like, this isn't professional. You need to wear nicer clothes, this and that, right? And I mean, my heart will always be on the carrier side of things. Doesn't matter how far I advance in my brokerage career. I mean, maybe somebody will ask me this in 5 or 10 years, and we'll see if the answer is the same. But to me, the drivers, that's where I relate to. That's the type of people that I enjoyed working with. I was, dispatched for them. I was running. My favorite story is my one driver came fresh out of driving school. He was born in Serbia. He went to the States, did driving school, and then I was dispatching his entire career for like 2 straight years, from the first load until the last load, where me and him worked together. And like, I got to see the evolution of like a truck driver from day one, and like how much better he became each month and each week, and the struggles we faced together with, our first winter storm together and the first shipper being closed together. And I mean, I feel like these events kind of forget to include those people kind of in the conversations, right? Like, they're speaking towards the businesses and the megas, and it's nice that we have some of smaller scale events where the people in the industry are actually, like you said, being spoken with and not to.
Yeah. Well, one of our attendees, this guy has been to every single summit so far. His name is Andy. He's from Wisconsin. He's a good friend of mine. He asked after the Fort Worth event if there was a way that we could reach out to what he calls the orphans of the industry, like the people that don't really use brokers. They don't haul regular stuff, but they're kind of on their own, and they're kind of alone, and they do their own thing. He wanted to know if there was a way we could reach out to them and bring them to this, so they can have some sense of community. Again, outside of the online communities that rate you by whether or not you scream at the sky as loudly as they do. So
that's a good analogy for the logistics industry, social media aspect of things.
In many ways, I think freight is. You remember that the meme or there's a video of the person who was screaming at the sky when Trump got elected the first time in 2016, like the ah. Sometimes I think that's what freight's like. People just doing that all the time. Just come on.
Yeah, I mean, I think somebody, I can't remember who said it to me pretty recently, and it kind of changed the tone on things, right? I honestly, I don't remember who it was. I wish I could give them credit, but it really gave me a perspective change on the industry, right? Because what we see and what we partake in social media, that's like not the majority of the industry. That's, the boisterous minority. And there's a lot, like, a silent majority of the industry that's not even dealing with these things. And they're just kind of like going about their day. And I think that we get caught in a bubble, like on our social media, because it's like the same people, same this, same that. And platform to platform, it varies differently, right? Like I've been told a billion times that Facebook is like where most of the drivers are. And I've still never like dipped my toes over there, which I would love to, but I just haven't got over.
You're better off not. Honestly,
yeah.
be better off getting on Telegram and finding the driver groups there. It's probably going to be more productive, and there's more of them on there.
But like the point, I mean, the point being of that is that we kind of get stuck in our bubbles, like you said, of the identifying with people that yell at the sky the loudest or the least, or the people that yell the same as us. That's who we get stuck with.
Well, and one of the things we tell people is the bad actors get all the good press, and so that's one of the things we're trying to change with the BCS. It's not just an event anymore; it's really grown into a movement within the freight industry, to the point where we rolled out the BCS Freight Network. We have some announcements around that coming up here in the next couple of weeks. We started a podcast group of our own. We have a number of things coming down the line this year where we're really trying to grow that sense of community, that highlights the people and the companies that are doing business the right way. So that if you're looking for a partner, if you're looking for a carrier, or carriers, if you're looking for a broker, or if you're looking for a tech platform or a factoring company or a TMS or anything, we want to be the source from which you get that information. So.
Yeah, I'm going to do a quick shameless little plug here. I mean, if you're looking for factoring, hit up OTR. And I don't know if you're familiar with Ryan Smith. He's like a really longtime friend of mine, the owner over at Purple Squirrel. They place like freight agents. And again, shameless little plug there on the new sponsors. But I think you're completely right with saying that, the bad actors get the most press, right? Because I think it says, I mean, we all expect every carrier, every broker, every shipper, we just have an expectation for business to be done correctly. So when it is done correctly, we just kind of don't think twice about it, right? Because that's the expectation in any industry, in any form of business. And then when people do something really crazy, it's like, okay, let's talk about like the stupid parts of it. But I think you're right. There needs to be more just highlighting the good people, right? Because I mean, it's an expectation, but in this current state of the industry, it's starting to become few and far between. I mean, if you're on the load boards, you're going to have more problems than you probably would like to admit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's one of the reasons why meeting in person and that connectedness, that networking ability is so important, especially now. I mean, we're about to, depending on who you listen to, we're about to go into a fairly decent market here at some point in the next 12 months or so. So you're going to need to be able to rely on, and you're going to want to rely on those partners that have carried you through the crap of the last 3 years.
Of course.
So being able to connect with those people and again build on the foundation that you built over the last few years is going to be more important.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had the pleasure of hanging out with the HMD Serbia office recently, and I got to talk to a really cool guy named PJ. And he was telling me, the conversations between the shippers and the customers in the dry van space is kind of changing, where they're not just saying like take it or leave it. They're starting to kind of warm up and be like, they're looking for solid, repeat capacity over what they've kind of been doing the past almost 3 years. So, I mean, like you said, depending on who you listen to, it could be next month, it could be 6 months, 12 months. But I'm optimistic heading into spring 2025 that we'll see. I mean, like my friends have said it the best, right? Even if we get to 2021 rates, it'll never be as profitable as it was back then due to the cost of fuel and repairs and all of these kind of things and inflation.
Right.
But I don't think we'll ever see that level of freight for, I mean, who knows when. But just a stabilization, right? Like, $3 a mile across the board, everybody can eat. And let's say everybody in this industry can eat if they work together and are, doing things as a partnership rather than like us versus them mentality. And I think the summit is hopefully going to be a driving force, to change some more people's minds that way.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things we learned as well, is that just because I win does not mean you have to lose. Like that, that's zero-sum game. Like it's a losing strategy, because when you're in a broker's market and the brokers are winning, if that means that the carriers have to lose, well, then they're going to screw you over when it's in a carrier's market, and then nobody wins. Everyone continues to scream at each other, and nobody actually gets out of the market cycles that are natural to this industry. Those swings are exaggerated due to lack of solid relationships. If you have solid partnerships that can transcend the trends, then the cycles don't matter as much, because instead of going up and down like this, you're kind of just bobbing along,
just kind of like hanging out in the median of the race instead of the exaggerated highs and lows. Right. Let me set you up for a nice little clip. I mean, if you could say, in an elevator pitch about Broker Carrier Summit to attract anybody who's maybe never been or never heard about it, what would that look like?
Yeah. Relationships in the freight industry have been broken for a very long time. And the Broker Carrier Summit is the only movement, event, network in the industry that is proactively working to fix it. So if you are in the freight industry in any capacity and you are looking for valuable partners that are worth your time and that will not let you down, then you need to come to the Broker Carrier Summit.
Yeah, that's cool. I had a quick question for you, and I probably should ask you this pre-show, and feel free to decline the question because it's kind of like, I probably should have checked this with you, but I really wanted to know because I was just curious as far as the carriers go. I mean, do you guys do any sort of like vetting on any of the carriers, or just kind of anybody can come hang out? I was just really curious about that, like on a personal level. Yeah,
we do. In fact, I've had a couple of phone calls where I've had to actually, give people their money back and say, hey, you're not going to be allowed here. So we run each carrier and broker that registers for the Broker Carrier Summit, and each carrier and broker who registers for the BCS Freight Network goes through a series of internal checks. I'm not going to reveal
I don't need your secret sauce on that.
Yeah, but we have a number of partners in the space, and we run it through all of them to say, hey, is this legit? And if they are, then fantastic. If not, then we send them packing.
No, yeah, I was just really curious because like you keep saying, valuable partners are worth your time, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, I completely forgot to ask you that, right? Because I don't want to like end up at the event.
No, it's the question, right? It's absolutely the question, and we can't. Because one of the things we're trying to build with the BCS network is we want to be the most trusted network in freight, and you can't do that if you let all the freaking scumbags in and don't do any vetting. So,
of course. No, I was just thinking it'd be funny too. You're like at one of these events, you ask a guy like, "Oh, what's your MC?" Like, get home, pop it in. It's like 20 reports.
He's got 90 PO boxes under his name. It's like, what is this?
Yeah, no, I'm happy. Thanks for clarifying that for me. That was just one of those things I laughed about the other night. I was like, imagine you're just having a conversation with a dude and like he just like steals your freight box.
Well, it's funny too. I almost want somebody like that to show up at the summit. I probably shouldn't say that because
Yeah,
they would get absolutely just raked over the coals. Because
yeah,
everyone, if there's ever an environment in freight where everyone is like super alert and watching out for fraudsters, it's the BCS. Like you're
yeah,
not going to come to the BCS and be like, I have 55 trucks, and because you got like Dale at Freight Validate, you got Highway, you got
yeah,
all these people there, like where they're checking in the back, like you don't have that. So
yeah.
it's
They're
not the
just
environment they want to come into.
yeah, like actively checking the insurance, how many VINs are on the insurance versus how many trucks this guy's like saying he has over here. Like, I mean, coming to
Exactly.
BCS if you're doing anything you shouldn't be is definitely not a good idea. Which is great. That's the environment we need in this industry, and I
Yeah.
hope that that's I have a little insider information on some of the major companies that they're all heading into some more stringent vetting stuff. So I'm hoping to see, in the next 6 to 12 months that our industry kind of tightens up a little bit because obviously it's been, we all know what it's been. I don't even want to get into that whole conversation. We've
Yeah.
all
Well,
been through it. We all know what's happening. Like,
yeah. Well, and one of the encouraging things about that too, just like rates, uh, fraud, bad actors, technology, everything moves in cycles.
yep,
And so we've gone through a very deep cycle of just rampant fraud. And the good thing about that is over the last few years, the industry has created a ton of tools to
yeah,
help combat that. But what's also been reinforced is the best tool for you to prevent fraud is, again, you sitting down with the person face to face and having the conversation. Um,
yep,
be, it's reinforced the fact that we may be able to have a lot of automation, a lot of technology, a lot of systems. We may have AI salespeople and AI brokers and whatever, but nothing is going to ever take the place of two people sitting face to face and having it out.
yeah. I mean, it's a relationship business, and I've had this kind of tech conversations with a lot of people recently too. But I mean, we'll see how it all goes. It's a relationship business. Pick up the phone, talk to people, go see each other. I mean, that's what it's supposed to be. I want to segue into your craziest freight story because I mean, in your career, I'm sure you have to have one or two
Oh
crazy ones.
gosh. Uh, see what I can tell on the air.
Yeah, yeah, we got to be a little careful with the stories we
Yeah.
choose.
So one of the funniest ones, I'll tell this one. This is one of the funniest ones. I was so pissed when this happened. So I used to move tractors when I was at TQL, and we had a driver show up, and he was told he needed to show up before 4 o'clock or they wouldn't load him. And I had a really good relationship with this shipper. In fact, I was the only broker that was allowed to move out of this particular facility. And the driver was pissed. He was mad at me, mad at his dispatcher, and so he arrived at the shipper at like 4:30 in the afternoon, and they were already gone because he was supposed to show up at 4. And so he called me, and he was angry, and he said, I'm here. They're not going to load me because nobody's here. I'm going to leave. I'm like, no, you're not going to leave because you were supposed to be on time, and I'm not going to get penalized because you can't keep to your clock. So stay over till the morning and get loaded. So he goes around the facility, and he's just banging on all the doors, just on the bay doors, the front door, like, just trying to
Right,
get
like
in.
any possible
Yeah,
thing that's
anybody
not a
here.
brick wall.
Yeah. So the way the docks were configured out in the back, there was this little lip that's of the warehouse floor that came out to where the pads were. And so he would next thing like we're looking at this on the cameras the next morning, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But he's just like banging on these doors. So I get a call from the shipper first thing in the morning on my cell phone at like 6 a.m. And I was like, "This is weird. This doesn't normally happen." And the manager called my phone, and she was like, "Hey Dan, we have a problem." I said, "Okay, what's the problem?" He's like, your driver showed up last night. Like, yeah, I told him he didn't need to stay over and he's going to get loaded the night or this morning. And they're like, we're not going to load him. I said, oh, okay. Well, that sucks for him. Why not? And she said, he took a shit on our dock.
Like,
Like
Oh, yeah.
he's like,
Yeah.
she's like, I'm looking at the cameras right now on the dock bed, little lip on the
Oh,
floor.
in the,
Yeah.
yeah, they caught him on the camera.
So she was like, can you call his dispatcher and kindly tell them we're not going to use them? I'm like, screw that. I'm going to call his dispatcher and tell him he needs to have his driver go clean it up, or we're gonna fine him. So that's what happened. I called the carrier. I called the dispatcher. Was like, hey, did your driver do this? And
Did
he's like,
your
let me call the
driver pop a squat on the dock,
Yeah.
man? Like,
yeah. And he's like, no, he didn't do that. Let me call him. And the driver's like, no, I didn't do that. I said, well, tell the driver that we have you on video camera doing that.
yeah, I don't know, man. That's I would honestly like love to just like that video would be the absolute funny. Like if somebody started like America's Funniest Home Videos, but like for freight, like I would watch that like religiously. That would be one of the greatest shows ever. And like the general population could also enjoy it. Like it'd still be hilarious. Like I mean, like I'll take you through that story where I had the driver do nothing similar to that. That's pretty insane. But we had like one driver and I get a call. Like my driver tells me I have to pick up. I'm like, that's cool, bro. Like enjoy, like get loaded, tell me when you're loaded. And he like calls me, he's like, hey, I'm loaded, like I'm leaving. I'm like, cool, like have a nice day, drive safe. And then I get a call, like very like immediately, like literally as I hang up the phone, my phone rings again. And I answer, the broker's like screaming at me. I'm like, dude, calm down. Like, why are you coming out the gates so hot? He's like, your driver destroyed my shipper's fence. He threatened to kill her. I'm like, what? I just talked to this guy. Like he said he's loaded and rolling. He's like, I'll send you the video. I'm like, yeah, like, because I don't believe him at this point. I worked with this driver a few months. He was like newer in my operation, but like he was like a cool dude. Like he just did his job like correctly, you know. And they sent me the video, and like this guy like pulled out with his door still open because he was pissed off. He like hit 3 of their fences on the way out, like spilt something. And then on top of it, like he threatened to come and like shoot the shipper. He's like, I'm gonna come back here and like I'm gonna like have problems with you guys. And I was like, okay, like I don't really believe that part of the story, but he sent me the fence footage, so I had to kind of believe him. So then my next step, I'm like, let me just call my driver. I'm like, hey, like, do you have any issues with the shipper? And he's like, no, like, what do you mean? I'm driving to the delivery. I'm like, yeah, like, I just watched you hit like 3 fences, bro. He's like, oh, no way. I'm like, yeah, just go to the delivery, like, be safe, you know? And then the shipper, like, told the broker to tell me not to fire my driver because then he was, like, she was really scared. Like, she was terrified, dude. And she's like, please don't fire the driver. Let him deliver the freight because if you fire him, he's going to think it was me. He's, like, going to come back here. I was like, yeah, don't worry, dude. Like, we let him deliver. He delivered, and then we just told him, like, yeah, that's your last load.
That's wild.
So,
there was a story. One of my shippers learned the hard way why you don't go with the cheapest truck.
Yep.
That was a fun story. So we did an RFP, about 100 lanes out of Kansas, and that was the facility. I was the exclusive broker on it for like 4 years, and they decided to go with the lower broker, and for like half the lanes. And I told them
how much lower, like $25 or like $300.
It was like 10% lower. And so not significant, not insignificant. But I told them, listen, I'm quoting this for an 18% margin because you're high value, all these different things. This company does not know you. They do not know your operations. You're going to get burned and you're not going to end up saving any money. In fact, it's going to cost you more. Yep. The first load at this broker ran.
I love this.
First load. And first load, the guy, the shipping director or the logistics director calls me from the shipper and he's like, hey, we have a problem with the truck. Oh yeah, which one? And he tells me which lane it was on. Like, hey, that's not my lane. You just gave that lane away. What happened? And he goes, oh, I really don't want to tell you now. Apparently the guy hadn't slid his tandems all the way in, and his trailer was like 20 years old. And it was like barely put together.
Don't tell me like it collapsed, dude.
It got collapsed in half in the middle of the road, and it was tractors, and so there's
in the middle of the road, like
middle of the road, like going down the road, it just split in half. And that was to
save 10%. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I asked him, I was like, so do you want me to fix it for you? He goes, no, I'll fix it, but you have all your lanes back. It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
I would love to see the damage on the tractor just being like instant, like 5-10 grand on the first ever shipment, like just immediately.
Oh yeah, it
It's
was
funny
nice.
how we keep going story for story though, because one of my best friends very recently is still in dispatch and told me, I don't even know how this happens, to be honest. Like his driver picked up 2 or 3 forklifts, and it's actually crazy. He picked up 2 or 3 forklifts, and he called my friend. He's like, "Hey man, there's no forklifts in my trailer." Like he had already left. He was driving like an hour or two from the shipper, and he's like, "Yeah, there's no forklifts in my trailer." And my friend's like how? Like that's physically impossible. Like they just put them in there. Like what do you mean? This guy somehow managed to like everything became unblocked, embraced. Everything just slid out the back of his trailer while he was driving, and like he didn't hear it, feel it, notice anything. Yeah, and then like the trailer's empty, no forklifts are in the trailer, and my friend tells him like just turn around and go find.
Go find him.
Dude, they found 3 forklifts. Yeah, they found 3 forklifts like somewhere in the road, like 20 minutes from like where he had stopped. So
To like motorized forklifts, not pallet jacks, like motorized.
No, like proper forklifts, man. And somehow, like some possible way, there was 0 damage, like maybe a little paint work, but there was like no damage to them. So
that's wild.
But yeah, all right, let's get out of the crazy freight stories, man. I want to go rapid fire with you on some personality stuff. When you're not building broker carrier summit and stuff like that, what's your favorite TV shows, movies, stuff like that?
I'm a nerd. I watch documentaries. So I just finished watching the documentary of Churchill at war, and I moved on to Fights, Camera, Action. I'm currently watching the Jerry Springer documentary. Have you watched that?
No, I haven't watched that.
That's crazy, man. That's wild. So yeah, I like watching documentaries and reading.
Yeah, I mean that's not really like nerdy. I thought you were about to say, like, "Oh, I love Lord of the Rings or World of Warcraft." I mean, I love World of Warcraft.
I do love Lord of the Rings. I've never played World of Warcraft or Dungeons and Dragons, but I do love a good adventure story. So
yeah, if you like documentaries and those, I'm a really big fan of those like recreations, like documentary style recreations. I just got through the Spotify TV series. That was like a really well made one.
Oh yeah.
And, yeah, if you haven't seen the Spotify one, if you haven't seen the movie Tetris, Tetris is also one of my favorite movies. Those are good recreations. As far as music goes, what's in your playlist these days?
Wow, that's a good one. Anything and everything, really. So right now I'm on an epic ambient music trip. So any old war movies or like fantasy movies, the music behind those, it actually calms me down quite a bit, like epic battle music.
Yeah, I mean, hey,
it's weird. Yeah,
to each their own. When it comes to sports, you playing or watching any sports? What's your sports life look like?
Yeah, so we'll be rooting for the Chiefs this weekend. My son and I are big Chiefs fans. We try to be Colts fans because we're in Indianapolis, but the Colts have sucked ever since Peyton Manning has left us. So it's kind of hard to be on the Irsay train right now. So
yeah, it's pretty tough. I mean, I'm born and raised in Toronto, and I mean, thankfully, we won the NBA Finals in 2019. But before that, we won in 1969 or 67 hockey. And my favorite statistic, being born and raised in Toronto, is that the final member of the only winning Toronto team that we had died. So there was not one living member left. And they were even expanded that to the cheerleaders. So she was the last cheerleader. So this isn't even like players' active roster. Like it had been so long that nobody was even alive from the team that won.
Not a single winner in Toronto.
Yeah, I understand your pain and suffering for being, born in a place that sucks at sports. But moving into the last 2 questions, man. I got, how often do you think of the Roman Empire?
Oh, great question. Probably every other day.
In what capacity?
You weren't expecting that, were you?
No, I wasn't, to be honest.
So third, fourth century Roman Empire, the mindset of the Colosseum. You want to know why the Colosseum was the symbol of Rome that it was? Because
yeah. Tell me, because I was gonna say just entertainment.
It was entertainment. But the motto of the Colosseum was "Panem et circenses," which means bread and circuses, which means basically if you keep the people from absolute starvation and you entertain them, that they will not rebel against you. And I have a hard time not making parallels to our current situation in the West and in America than that.
Yeah.
And so every other day almost I'm drawing parallels like, oh, I see this. This used to happen at 2,000 years ago. So
Yeah, that's actually a really, really, really solid answer to that question. And I don't know, me and you are just going tit for tat right now. You just make me think of like all these things. I read recently, I got into reading again a couple months back, maybe like a year ago. And I managed to find in Serbia an English copy of like Machiavelli, like one of his original books.
Oh, the Prince.
It's like, yeah, I think it's called The Prince, and it's like really boring from like the outside, and it's still really boring to me, and it's like suffering to read it. But like the principles and the concepts of how to control the masses from this guy, like I don't even know what year that was written. It's like 1600s or something. And you think like
1450s.
1450. There you go.
Yeah.
And it's like the same things are happening. Like they still apply. These are just basic control principles of masses and how to like move armies around.
Yeah, there's nothing new. So my major in college was world history. That's one of the things that you learn is like if you can know history, you can predict your future.
I want to see Gladiator too, actually.
I've heard
Have you seen Gladiator? You didn't watch it either?
I didn't watch the second one. I hate sequels. With a fiery passion. And Gladiator 1, like the first one, was my favorite movie for like 15 years.
Right,
so I almost don't want to watch it because I don't want to ruin it.
You want to hear my hot take? And I might, like, honestly, this is the take that I feel like I've kind of been ruined by social media and the attention span issues. Like, my hot take is that Gladiator 1 is like not a great movie. Like, I didn't even finish it. Like, that's how much I didn't like it because, bro, okay, so like it was a great story and everything was cool and everything was building up. And I'm okay with the slow pacing. I'm okay with that. Yeah. You know where I wasn't okay with that movie is the scene where like the son kills his dad and then like the acting where he's like fake crying. I'm like, yeah, this movie sucks. I just basically took it off at that exact moment. So hot take, Gladiator 1.
That was the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, that was like right at the start. I like went into it like wanting to love it, and then I saw that scene. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna pick this up tomorrow. And I just never put it
it's okay. You weren't the only one to not finish that movie. You know who else did not finish that movie?
Who?
Maximus.
Oh my god. Yeah, that's a dad joke. I'll give you that one.
That's all right.
Pretty fire. All right, I gotta finish the first one. I'll pick up the second one. I'll get back to you on it. Final question, man, and we're out. That's brutal, dude. When you eat chicken wings, man, you going drums or flats?
I'm gonna go drums.
You're gonna go drums. Ranch or blue cheese on the dipping sauce?
Blue cheese every time.
That's great. And here we go, man. You could go 3 for 3 right answers. It all comes down to this: breaded or non-breaded?
Non-breaded.
Oh, right there. You're right there, man. Going 2 for 3. At least you go drums and blue cheese is great. Non-breaded, breaded. That's kind of a health choice. So I'll give you that.
2 out of 3. That's 66%. I was a C student, so that's about par for the course. So
yeah, you're still ahead, bro.
still working.
Yeah. All right, Dad. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for finally sitting down with me. And I look forward to joining ABCS hopefully at the end of this year if you guys are going to do one or early next year.
Likewise, brother. We'll be happy to have you.
Hey, happy Friday. Have a good rest of your day, man.
You as well. Take care.
That's going to wrap up Asset Base Season 2, Episode 5 with Dan Lindsey, the founder of the Broker Carrier Summit. If you're a broker or a carrier, check out their new event out in Indy. It's going to be coming up soon. For more information, hit up their website. And that's going to be it for me for today.